What's up, YouTube? It's Heretic here, and I'm back with another deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at another standard format deck leading into cities, and that is the big, bad Mega Mewtwo Y. And I say Y because there's a Mega Mewtwo X, and now apparently there's been Dark Mewtwo revealed for Pokémon Tournament, or whatever that ends up being. That thing looks freaking badass, in the vein of Metal Armored Mewtwo from the original anime, which I still wish they'd make that into a card, but I digress. Mega Mewtwo Y, or M Mewtwo EX, however you want to refer to it. We're going to go ahead and take a look at a deck featuring this card as our main attacker and see what we can do with it. So we're going to start with 3 basic Mewtwo EXs, and I chose the blue one, the one with Photon Wave for 2 double colorless, or for 2 colorless, sorry, because we do not run basic Psychic Energy in this deck, so no room for Shatter Shot here. So this attack does 30 damage for a double colorless, and also reduces damage done to Mewtwo during your next turn from the defending Pokemon, or your opponent's next turn, sorry, from the defending Pokemon by 30 damage. So, not great, but not terrible. I mean, it's definitely not X-Ball, but we'll manage to live with that in Standard. And still not a bad niche attack. And then we have 3 copies of Mega Mewtwo. And this is, as I said, your featured attacker. For 2 colorless, you do Psychic Infinity for 10 damage plus an additional 30 more damage for each energy attached to both players' active Pokemon. So this is like super X-Ball here. The one drawback to this attack is that it does not hit for weakness, so if you go up against another Mega Mewtwo, you actually are going to have to stack and try to OHKO that massive 210 HP without it. That said, getting this thing up to 3-4 energies, if your opponent has, say, 3 energies attached to their active, is not difficult. And the math adds up even perfectly enough to take out the colorless Mega Rayquaza EX, as 4 energies here and 3 on Rayquaza is 210 damage, plus that base 10 equals 220, which is enough for a knockout there, so no complaints there. Overall, this is a pretty powerful attacker, and there's a lot of things you can run this with, but we're just going with a straightforward list here with our more standard text from the new set, and that's going to feature Zoroark. So we have 2 copies of Zorua. There are 2 different Zoruas you can choose from the new set to work with. Both have 60 HP. This is just the one I chose because I didn't really think their attacks made that much of a difference, and this one looks cooler. So choose whichever one you like. 2 copies of Zoroark. This is a very legit card for the deck, as well as an alternative non-EX attacker, which can be big against stuff like Regice. Stand-in is Zoroark's ability, pretty much the same as Keldeo EX's Russian ability. Once during your turn before attacking, you can switch this Pokemon if it is on your bench with your active. And then, of course, if he has a Float Stone, he can retreat for free. Get rid of status conditions and other stuff. And then for 2 colorless, he does Mind Jack for 10 plus 30 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and that can add up to be a lot in certain matchups. With Skyfield potentially as high as 250, and even without it, 160 damage for a 1-prize attacker, and double colorless is pretty darn good. Especially when he is not your main attacker in your deck. And then, just because we can, and we have the 1 card slot, we run 1 copy of Zoroark Break, which combos with the regular Zoroark, so in essence it looks more like this. And this guy, in addition to maintaining Zoroark's bottom stats, weakness, resistance, retreat, and his Mind Jack attack and stand-in ability, also gives Zoroark an HP boost up to 140 and an additional attack for 1 darkness energy, Foul Play, which lets you copy one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as your own. So yet another way to expand on having an alternative non-EX attacker. Very potent card here, and a lot of possibilities here. So just a unique little tech idea there. We also run 2 copies of Shaman EX to draw cards. Not much else to say there. And 1 copy of Hoopa EX, which you might actually be able to cut from the deck, although I do like being able to search out Mewtwo's early and also search Shaman for some extra draw power. So that's definitely a positive there. So 1 Hoopa EX. Supporters, we have 4 Professor Sycamores, because standard dump and draw is pretty good, and there's not a lot of draw power in supporters as far as standard goes. One of the other cards we have for that is Judge, so 2 copies of Judge. Shuffle draw, both sides. Both players shuffle their hand in, draw 4. 2 Lysanders because we like to kill things. Pretty standard. No pun intended. 1 Giovanni Scheme. This is an interesting little supporter card that gives you 2 choices. You can either draw your hand up to 5, which may not seem like much, or during this turn your Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active before applying weakness and resistance. And that in itself, just a muscle band effect may not seem like much either, but when you have the option to choose between the 2 effects, it's actually a lot better than you might think. It's been testing pretty well, so go ahead and run 1 of those. And then we run 1 copy of Hex Maniac, of course, since the only abilities in the deck are Stand-In, and then the abilities that we play early game for Shaman and Hoopa. So you use your abilities if you need them for the turn, and then just turn them off afterwards. And speaking of turning off abilities, we also run 2 copies of Silent Lab. I've chosen this over Dimension Valley because Dimension Valley really, most of the time, is not relevant as we're putting way more than 1 energy on our Mega Mewtwo. Silent Lab's ability negation, taking away stuff like your opponent's Shaman or Hoopa, especially if you go first, giving you an alternative out in case you don't get the Hex Maniac play set up right away. Very effective card. And then 2 copies of Parallel City, and this can do a lot. Against the Rayquaza matchup, you can knock their bench size down. Against a deck like Vespiquen, you can lower their damage by 20, which might not seem like much, but you'd be surprised how much or how big of a difference that can make when your main attacker has a massive 210 hit points that really, in effect, becomes 230 in that situation. So 2 effects, both very potent there. Neither one really hurts this deck much, as once you're set up, the only real bench sitter you have is Zoroark, and then you're free to set up another Mewtwo if you so desire. We have 4 copies of Versus Seeker, as one would expect. 4 Mega Turbos. This might seem like a lot, but this is going to get your Mega Mewtwo running quickly and consistently. If one gets knocked out, you can charge up another one, attach double colorless, play a Mega Turbo or 2, and you've got another massive attacker going right there. You can always stand in Zoroark for 1 turn and use Mind Jack or Foul Play if you need to. So definitely some options there. To go with the Mega Turbos, 3 Battle Compressors. These also work to compress out supporter cards, and then play them with Versus Seeker. So another powerful combo there, and you can also drop any dead weight you might have at whatever point in the game you draw this card. This is a great card early game. It's great late game and mid game to get rid of stuff you don't want to draw, or to, in effect, search for a lot of stuff. Just a lot of utility there. Definitely one of the best cards in the game, if you ask me. 3 Trainer's Mail to help you speed to your supporters, stadiums, items, whatever trainer card you need. 3 copies of Ultra Ball to search out Pokemon. Hoopa, of course, can search out every Pokemon in the deck except for the Zoroark line, so that's in a way where this comes in handy. Also dropping your hand count so that Shaman and Giovanni can draw you more cards. 3 Mewtwo Spirit Links, pretty standard with a 3/3 Mega Mewtwo line. 2 copies of Floatstone, mainly for Zoroark, but you can put them elsewhere if necessary. It gives you free retreat, nice re-addition to the game with Breakthrough coming back out, meaning this card was not out of standard for very long. Definitely welcomed back. 4 double colorless energy, as that's really how all your attackers operate off of, and then 6 basic darkness energy so that we can use Zoroark Breaks attack, which I favor much more over being able to charge up to Cyburn or using Shatter Shot with the other basic Mewtwo EX, which just is not necessary. But you can always cut the Zoroark Break and try to use different basic energy and maybe a different tech attacker if you like. It's really, there's a lot of things you can do. Mega Mewtwo is also compatible with Bronzong from Phantom Forces as an energy accelerant. There are other ways to run it as well. I'm not going to go too much into those right now, as we may see those deck profiles later on. But for now, this is our basically just straightforward Mega Turbo version of Mega Mewtwo EX with Zoroark as our alternative attacker. This deck's been having a pretty good amount of success right now. Night March, of course, in Standard is really only played with Vespiquen. That said, Pumpkaboo is a pretty scary opponent for this deck. Vespiquen itself, honestly, has been manageable, contrary to what you might think. Parallel City, that -20, definitely coming into play there. And overall, just a pretty solid deck and a lot of fun to play. I've been having a lot of enjoyment with this, playing this against a lot of the other popular decks, and I look forward to continuing to see if it tests well going into cities, as it has been. That's all I got for you guys right now, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.